Imagine spending a decade in tiny rented rooms, writing 5 full-length novels by candlelight, and having every single one rejected by publishers. Most people would have quit. He kept writing. Years later, that same man would win the Nobel Prize in Literature and become one of the most influential playwrights in history. His name was George Bernard Shaw. He operated on a very specific philosophy. While a reasonable person adapts to the world, the unreasonable person persists in trying to adapt the world to himself. Therefore, all progress depends on the unreasonable person. His journey from a penniless outcast to a revered literary legend required a calculated refusal to conform to what society expected of him. That refusal started early. Born in Dublin, Ireland in 1856, Shaw grew up in a household lacking both money and stability, strained heavily by his father's alcoholism. He quickly developed an intense dislike for formal education. He observed that schools were designed to teach students exactly what to think, rather than how to think. So he abandoned the traditional classroom. Instead, he turned public libraries into his personal training ground, relying entirely on his own curiosity to pull himself through an enormous volume of books. Bypassing the school system was his first major act of defiance. It set a lifelong pattern of questioning accepted beliefs, rather than blindly following them. At age 20, Shaw moved to London with almost no money, stepping into one of the most competitive and unforgiving cities in the world. He expected to become a successful writer immediately. The reality was a decade of living in tiny rooms, relying on his mother to survive, while accumulating a towering stack of perfectly useless, entirely rejected manuscripts. Yet he refused to view these constant rejections as proof that he lacked talent. To Shaw, failure was simply part of the journey, a necessary phase to sharpen his intellect. Unable to make a living from novels, he pivoted. He started writing newspaper reviews, first covering music, then art, and eventually theater. As a critic, he was fearless. He prioritized blunt truth over polite praise, using his clever humor to skewer powerful figures. Readers either loved him or hated him, but everyone paid attention. Those 10 silent years of failure had given him the intellectual ammunition he needed. He had built a critical voice so sharp that the public simply couldn't ignore it. By the 1890s, Shaw turned his attention directly to writing plays, but he flatly refused to create mindless entertainment to pass the time. He wanted audiences to think. He weaponized the stage, writing scripts that forced the public into uncomfortable conversations about poverty, wealth inequality, and rigid class structures. His most famous masterpiece, Pygmalion, explored social mobility by telling the story of a lower-class flower seller who transforms into a sophisticated lady entirely through language and education. Decades later, that same story evolved into the global film and musical phenomenon, My Fair Lady, introducing Shaw's ideas to millions. He had successfully hijacked mainstream entertainment. He turned the theater into a Trojan horse, slipping radical social critiques directly into popular culture. By the early 20th century, Shaw was recognized as one of the world's greatest writers, culminating in the 1925 Nobel Prize in Literature. His reaction stunned the public. He gladly accepted the prestigious honor, but he firmly refused to take a single penny of the prize money. When asked why, he joked that giving him money after he had already reached the shore safely was as unnecessary as throwing a drowning man a life preserver after he was already out of the water. That refusal perfectly captured his character. He was a man who consistently valued the integrity of his ideas and the purpose of his work far above any material profit. Shaw remained fiercely active well into his 90s, keeping his mind sharp with constant writing, speaking engagements, and tending to his property. In 1950, at the age of 94, a fall while pruning a tree in his garden led to complications that eventually caused his death. Today, his plays are performed globally, and his philosophies on politics and education are still fiercely debated in classrooms around the world. His life leaves us with a clear lesson. Your future is not determined by poor beginnings or early failures. It is entirely shaped by your determination to outlast rejection. The young man whose novels nobody wanted became one of the greatest writers in history. If his persistence inspired you, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and keep exploring, because the people the world overlooks today often become the legends everyone remembers tomorrow.